This is Suzanne Kellner-Zinck, certified trainer, hypnosis, neurolinguistic programming, and timeline therapy, speaking to state licensed mental health providers specializing in the treatment of anorexics and bulimics. We know that many people leave the field for various reasons, including feeling burnt out because of the rigid rules and regulations within the programs themselves, feelings of not having enough resources to do the work that's necessary to be done with these patients, having a huge responsibility treating patients who have sometimes life-ending illnesses that are very hard, very complicated to treat with the conventional means available. And there's an emotional involvement sometimes with people who choose to go into this profession where they don't have their boundaries clearly defined for themselves, so they get enmeshed with the patients, which can cause emotional distress for the person who is providing the treatment. So how do you deal with these issues? Well, I'm going to tell you that I had 3 very special clients. I'm not state licensed, so I don't have things called patients. I have clients. And clients work with you 50-50, at least in the world of hypnotism, because they have their own answers in their own minds, which is important to understand. Just because they can't access it without a hypnosis trance state being induced to help them to make the connections doesn't mean they don't have their own answers. And I will also share with you that even when they are not in the hypnotic trance state, they have their own answers anyway. They know what they're comfortable with. I had clients, all 3 of them, one anorexic who was in a PhD program for Russian literature after she dropped out of becoming a medical doctor. Both of her parents were medical doctors. She decided that wasn't what she wanted to do with her life. And another who was a bulimic, who was a videographer, documentarian. She did amazing work. And another one who was involved in the design of magazines. All very creative people, and each and every one of them, back in 2005, it's now June 27th, 2024, had strongly advised me, suggested, told me to create a training for people like you. Folks who are state licensed, having been trained in the allopathic method of working with anorexics and bulimics. Because I found in their inpatient and outpatient treatment programs, one of them who had been through 2 inpatient and 1 outpatient, one that had been in an inpatient and outpatient, and the other one who had been only in an inpatient, they all complained of the rigidity of the programs, of not being listened to, being faulted for eating in the case of the anorexic, which is what we need them to do, eat calories, yes? And in all of the cases, they were distressed because the methods that were used were dehumanizing in so many ways. And they never reached the core issues as to why the eating disorders developed in the first place. And I'm here to tell you, it's not the symptoms of the eating disorder that matter. It is the reason why the eating disorders developed, which has everything to do with emotional traumas, usually from early on. And we know that many of these patients have been sexually abused or molested when they were younger, probably during an age when they didn't even understand what sex was. In many cases, that was true in all 3 of the cases of my clients, by the way, that I'm speaking of, and many others that I work with since then. As well as the fact that many of them come from households where the family system is full of distress for one reason or another. In many of the cases that I had, their mothers had anorexia, not all of them, but many of them. Controlling fathers in many cases, and sometimes controlling mothers as well. And in many cases, we were dealing with mothers who also were suffering from depression and or drug abuse, which meant that they were not present in many ways, but yet they were demanding things of their kids that their kids, well, weren't interested in doing or maybe couldn't do, including getting straight A's in school in all of the subject matters. Now, I'm not saying this is true in every case. Obviously, each family dynamic is different, but I am saying that unless until we determine what caused the eating disorder and then why the eating disorder is continuing even with all the self-harm involved, we have no idea as to why this condition is continuing. What we would say in NLP terms, neuro-linguistic programming terms, is that this eating disorder is serving a purpose. And the purpose is to give them some form of safety. We don't think of it in that way, of course, but that's why it's a disorder. They have disordered thinking involved. And I'm here to tell you that if you're willing to learn how to integrate hypnotism, neuro-linguistic programming, and timeline therapy into your healing protocol, based on the training that I developed specifically for these clients of yours, in a Master's of Instructional Design and Technology, which means all of the learning theories are included, and I had 18 months of intensive instruction on how to create this program specifically for you, because this is something that my clients, one after the other, the first 3 that I worked with, had told me was necessary in this profession. So if you're sick of getting poor results for your clients because you don't have the tools and techniques that you ought to have learned, because quite frankly, the foundation of everything that you do goes back to the hypnotist and the experimenters, as they were called back in the 17 and 1800s, who are able to help their patients and clients overcome these problems, you would know what you need to know. But unfortunately, Sigmund Freud put the profession into a different paradigm based on weekly sessions for life called psychoanalysis, setting back the entire profession over 100 years now. That's a fact. And I believe you understand that because you're probably feeling really frustrated with the lack of results your patients are receiving, along with the fact that you probably are feeling really unfulfilled, probably burnt out, sick of filling out endless paperwork, both for your employer if you have one, and certainly for the health insurance companies that cover a lot of these patients, shall we say, investment into this care, as well as the fact that many times you have to fight to actually be paid for the sessions you already gave to certain patients with the health insurance companies. We know this happens every freaking day. I read about it all the time on LinkedIn. Therapists are really frustrated and many are leaving the field totally and going into coaching. I'm not suggesting you go into coaching. You worked really hard to get your degrees, and you did learn some theories that I would say hypnotists and coaches do not have and do not understand, which are important for you to be able to really thoroughly integrate this work into your healing protocol, as I call it. Because you understand the foundations of the psychology and the psychopathy. But the difference is that I'm not looking to help you to manage symptoms for your patients. I'm looking to help you heal the underlying cause of the eating disorder, the purpose for why it's still there, understanding that, and helping your patients release it so they can move on to normal lives, which is what these patients really want, because many of them are sick of feeling the shame of having the eating disorder. Many of them do the best they can to hide it, as we well know, both anorexics and bulimics. And we also know that it gets really tiring trying to live 2 lives, which is what these patients of yours are doing. So if you're interested in learning more, I'm going to be doing a webinar that will explain the foundational concepts behind the treatment program that I developed, my master's program in instructional design and technology, so that you can make an assessment whether or not it is worth investing into learning these tools and techniques in a 3-day VIP training done online, one-on-one, that is specifically developed to help you help your patients heal and move on in life. And in so doing, you'll be able to attract much higher self-paying patients because you can deliver something that the other treatment programs for those with anorexia and bulimia are unable to do because they do not know how to do these things, as well as giving yourself location independence because you can do this work anywhere you have a Wi-Fi connection. I know because I've been doing it for, since 2013, way before everybody else decided to go online. I had a client who lived really close to where my home office was located in Arlington, Massachusetts at the time, and I had moved out to California, 3,000 miles away from him. He had agoraphobia, didn't want to go anywhere, so working through Skype at that time worked really well for him, and that's how I learned how to do all this stuff online, way before the masses. So if you're interested, you can click the I'd love to take your webinar now button, and you will be signing up for the webinar, and you'll be able to learn more about how this all works so you can reclaim your practice and your life. I look forward to seeing you on the webinar real soon.